And it's a very warm welcome to Absolutely Famous today by our expert on Wallabies rugby, Michael Broad. Michael's a former under-21 Australian player and coached the Australian Schoolboys team. Michael, the Aussie versus England series mirroring a little bit what's happening in New Zealand with Ireland and the All Blacks. The honours shared after a couple of tests.
Yes, it's very interesting, isn't it, John? After the first week, everyone's saying, Southern Hemisphere rugby's back on top. But I think it showed that both in England and Ireland were a little bit underdone and playing that test level rugby. And I think, one game under their belt, they certainly did a lot of homework on their opposition. And obviously in the second test in both games, you saw a different England and a different Ireland, and that style of Northern Hemisphere rugby that we were all gloating about, during the Six Nations.
Yeah, I think there was a obviously pretty obvious mindset. The English and the Irish both looked doubly determined, and I was really impressed with the English in the first half against the Wallabies. I mean, when they shot out to a 19-0 lead, it looks as though they were going to muscle them off the park. But credit to Aussie for coming back again for the second time.
Sure, and the Wallabies certainly did come back in both games. I was surprised how much possession England had in that first half in the second test. They really dominated possession, dominated field position, and they went so direct. It was interesting watching who they were directing. Obviously, a lot of traffic at some of the smaller defenders in the Australian side in the first half. And they, again, they really looked at dominating through space rather than running into individuals. So, they were doing a lot of footwork close to the defender to try and get onto inside or outside shoulders and get through space, and they did it very well.
I thought Alice Gens, their prop, sort of summed up their attitude, didn't he? Taniela Tupou threw him some bait during the week, and unfortunately for Taniela, he took it with interest.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. They were certainly fired up for the game, and I think, again, wanting to show that that first test was an aberration. I mean, when you consider, England only just lost the first test, so they really wanted to make a mark, and they certainly did. That first half was extraordinary. But as you said, the Wallabies only need some consistent possession and field position, and they can score tries very quickly. And I think they showed they're a dangerous side when they have consistent possession. It's just getting that constant flow of possession and not having to defend phase after phase after phase.
Yeah, as well as England played, I still think they kicked the ball too much. I think both teams, I think all teams in international rugby, if they look at the videos, I think, why the heck did I kick that?
Yes.
Kicks that are not contested just for the sake of it. They've got men lined up outside them. It's an aggravating part of the game sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was coaching some junior kids up in Toowoomba yesterday, and they had gone to the game. And I said, "Oh, what did you think of the game?" And they just said, "Oh, there was too much kicking."
Yeah.
And interesting, from the mouths of babes comes some truth. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So who's shone for you for the Aussie team? Who have you been impressed with so far in the two tests?
Oh, look, I don't know if anyone has really stood out. I think there's certainly their set piece continues to be an area that they want to dominate, and at times they do, and then at times, just a bit of lack of concentration, and they lose the scrum or their line-out throw's not great. I think having Samu Karevi back in the side gives them direction in terms of going straight. He straightens up the attack a lot. Certainly the number of injuries has a bit worrying, but look, I really have to say there's no one who, to me, is standing out as being a game breaker or taking control, whereas, I thought the English number 8, Vinapolo, he was extraordinary on Saturday night. He just said, he just led the way, said, "Follow me," and the way they went. I don't know whether there's anyone in the Australian team who's doing that. I think they're all working well. They're working hard together. And I think that's a really good part about it, that maybe, they're all doing their jobs, they're all doing their bit, and that's why, they're getting a reasonable result.
I think, well, to me, Rob Valetini, the loose forward, he's a definite weapon, isn't he? He's a wrecking ball when he's given a bit of room to move.
Yeah, he is. It's interesting. I was looking at a few reports about the game, and some people, really like him. Some don't. They think, he's in and out of games a bit too much. He's not there consistently. Like a Michael Hooper continually is on the ball, and you always see Hooper involved. A lot of people think he's in and out of games too much. So I must admit, I'm not sold on him yet. I still think there might be other players who just have that consistency of effort that doesn't come, like a roller coaster that you see him sometimes and all of a sudden disappears.
Do you think Pete Samu needs to play more minutes? I mean, he's a guy that does play consistently when he's on the field.
Yeah, I do. I thought in the first test, the Australian bench really value added to their team's performance. And I think that's critical, that the benches really play a huge role, especially in international rugby now, because some of them can come on so early in the game and really make a contribution that changes the flow. So I think he's one of those guys that, does make a difference when he comes on, and be interesting to see if he did get a run on to see what sort of impact he could have over 80 minutes.
Yeah, I felt at one stage when Australia had fought back, I think it was to 22-17, they had a couple of opportunities to take the game out there too, and just a couple of crucial errors, so there wasn't a lot in it in the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely, there wasn't a lot in it, John, you're right. And it's just, they're a bit of coach killers sometimes, those times when you think, oh, we're really on top here and we just have to get a score. Interesting, when I talk to schoolboys, I talk about a try-conscious attitude in that last 22-metre line area, that, you do everything in your power to make sure your concentration's at its best, your execution is accurate, consistent, and you get reward from that. So, it's just nailing those special moments, because as you would be aware in test matches, those special moments don't come very often. And in that game, when you were trying to claw back a long lead, and 19-0 was a huge lead in a test match, I thought Australia did fantastically well, and it was just nailing that special two moments that, it was disappointing that they didn't.
Really good test series. I mean, the first test was only 2 points in it. Yeah. Close again on Saturday at Suncorp Stadium. What a fantastic crowd too, almost a full house here. That's marvellous to see.
Yeah, it's a great venue, and they certainly they were in good voice, both the Wallaby crowd and the English.
Yeah, they were. They're entertaining, of course. And now the depth is going to be severely tested this week. I think Jordan Petaia, Scott Seo, Isaiah Parisi and Caden Neville, the lock are all either definitely out or most probably out. So that's going to test Dave Rennie's squad.
Certainly. I think they'll be fine, though. I think they've been very smart in ensuring that over the last few years, Dave Rennie's really involved a lot of the Super Rugby teams, their players into the squad. And so I think there's plenty of players in their program that have been involved and know their system. So I'm sure whoever replaces those players that have been injured, they will do a fabulous job in the third test at the Sydney Cricket Ground, I think.
How do you see that one going? If you're a betting man, would you put your money on?
I obviously I hope the Wallabies will win. I think home advantage is a terrific thing, but certainly England will have great confidence in their way in which they've rebuilt after the first test, and the fact that they only just lost the first test, they were in total control. I think both England and Ireland will realise that having had those first two games, they're getting match fit again. They're getting they're getting their systems back together that they had going in the Six Nations. So I think both the Irish and English tests here down the Southern Hemisphere they'll be crackers of a game. I think I backed New Zealand to bounce back very swiftly and aggressively. I don't think you'll see them play like they did on Saturday, and I think that'll be a ripper of a game, and certainly I think the English and the Wallaby game will be very similar.
Oh, it's interesting to hear you say about the All Blacks game, because I felt it was one of the just a performance where they just did not fire a shot. They didn't look at as though they were going to win that game at any stage, and it was pretty alarming for me the way we played, and we just don't seem to be settled on combinations in key areas, and not confident.
It's interesting, over the years watching the All Blacks, whenever they get a yellow card, or I think teams are realising that that's probably their only chance to really dominate the All Blacks. So I think teams really galvanise themselves as soon as a New Zealand player gets a yellow card or so. I think they see that's their big chance, and they've got to really take advantage of it. And certainly, I thought New Zealand were just a little bit off their game, and at this level now, and I suppose it's been like that for a while now. In any, look at NRL, you look at the Super Rugby. If you're a few percent off, all the teams are good enough to take advantage and win those games. And certainly Ireland and England this week were really pumped because they wanted the series to go back to 1-1. And I think Australia and New Zealand might have just been a bit slow out of the blocks.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at the teams, I mean, there was a great weekend for Northern Hemisphere rugby. Wales beat South Africa. Yes. Scotland beat Argentina. France just edged out Japan. So I think next year's World Cup is going to be one of the most open in the history of the tournament.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, John. I think this tour for all those teams that are down in the Southern Hemisphere from the Northern Hemisphere will take great heart in terms of being able to match it down here and realising that, the Southern Hemisphere have to travel to the Northern Hemisphere. They'll be in their conditions, they'll be in their climate, and I think they'll take enormous benefit from this tour. And I think we're seeing that the standard of coaching over there, which we've talked about before in terms of all the coaches that have influenced both Irish, English and Welsh rugby and Scotland rugby, will hold them in great stead. And, and France being in their home country, they'll be extremely difficult to beat, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And sadly, a lot of the talk on the weekend was about the discipline, the yellow cards, the red cards dished out. And I totally agree with Eddie Jones and Andrew Mertens, to name two, that have come out and saying that this has just got out of control. I don't blame the referees. The referees are only following instructions, but their bosses have got it all wrong. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's a physical, explosive game played by superb athletes and changing angles on impact, and just some common sense has got to come in here, Michael.
Yeah, I think you're right. I certainly agree with you, John. That I certainly don't blame referees. They're refereeing to the rules or the laws of the game. They've been advised as to how that should be interpreted. So, how they're being advised needs to be reassessed. It's very difficult. Commentators will say, you only need common sense. But on the run and, different people have different views on what common sense is. And so, I can see it's disappointing for the crowd. It's disappointing for the spectacle. But, we're coaching schoolboys over here, and just in modified games we play, if kids knock it down, we just send them on a run. You just cannot do that anymore. That's not it's not going to be accepted in the game. So the players have to take responsibility. They know the laws as well, and so if they especially for the intercept law, if they try to go for it, the chances are 9 times out of 10 you'll either get a penalty or you'll get yellow carded. So, there's got to be some onus put on the players to realise, well, that's not acceptable in the game anymore. I've just got to stop making that choice. But I agree with you. The physicality one, the one where the poor All Black prop got sent off, that I don't see how he could have changed direction. I realised that he was standing tall, but I don't think in that speed of the game, his body height, I don't think there was anything wrong with his body height. It's just the guy, they just had an accident.
Yeah, ironically, he was the one that went to hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, crazy. I sort of spoke to my brother the other day. He's a work health and safety man. I said, if you did a risk assessment on the sideline about the dangers of rugby, you'd probably ban the scrums, you'd ban tackling, you'd ban mauls, you'd have touch rugby.
Yeah.
So,
it's very true.
Where does
very
it stop?
True.
Yeah.
It's I agree. It's certainly. I had a mate of mine just ring me who's not a rugby coach but loves watching the Wallabies, and he just said, what is the law here? And I explained the law to him, and then he realised, okay, I understand the decision. But that's the problem. A lot of people who love watching the Wallabies or love watching the All Blacks or Irish or English, if they don't know the law, they look at that and going, well, that seems very harsh and very silly decision. But under the laws, I know the referees know the laws is better than anyone. But as you say, whoever's advising them, maybe that needs a good sit down. I think it just needs to be addressed by World Rugby. There are enough excellent coaches and people out there who can sort of sit down and say, well, look, this is how we have to move forward. This is how we can make the game safer, but within parameters of knowing that there are going to be mistakes that don't have to be absolutely penalised to the harshest limit of a red card.
Yeah, because as it is at the moment, you're almost taking dynamics out of the game, which it's played at 100 miles an hour.
Correct, absolutely, and you can't train at 100 miles an hour all the time, right? It's just impossible to ask players to maintain that sort of level of intensity over a number of periods of training sessions a week. It's a really difficult question. I think they are very much onto the head clash and concussion. I think they've done that really well. The rugby union and the different teams, the doctors, I think they've got that under control really well, and the players' safety is now paramount. And I think that's great. It's just how we administer the law around head clashes, and obviously from the weekend the deliberate knock-on is a difficult one.
Yeah, and on another subject, Michael, your next gen rugby coaching business going well. You've been very busy.
Yeah, John, we were so lucky here in Brisbane. We had the first 3 days of the school holidays, and the next day, on the Thursday, the rains opened and the heavens opened. So we were extremely fortunate. We had about 240 kids at our clinic over the 3 days. So basically we've had 3 clinics this year. So we've hit over 800 kids at our clinics this year, which was just fabulous. And the commentary from the parents and the information sent back to us has been extremely positive. And, I'm very thankful and appreciative of the fantastic coaching staff that I've got that come from the various schools and the various clubs around Brisbane. So, yes, very successful. And now I move more into school rugby now, and that'll go through through the end of third term.
Of course, you're looking after St Joseph College, Gregory Terrace. There's some big games coming up for them. Yeah,
certainly. We have our first game this Saturday against Anglican Church Grammar School, who are coached by the ex-Terrace first coach. So that's always an interesting battle. And certainly we played our brother school, Nudgee College, in a trial on Saturday, and Nudgee won 20-10. So that was a really good test for us, and certainly showed that we're on task to have a good season, because I think we'll be very competitive. Churchy are a very strong side, so that this weekend will be a tough hit out for us. So there's some good young talent coming through the ranks. What you've seen? There's some extraordinary talent, John. Really good players. So there are a number of players who are in the Queensland under-18 sides already, who are still at school. So they've been identified very early, and those Queensland teams have already been picked. and some of them have been playing in Sydney last week. And there's also quite a number of rugby league players in the various schools, and they've been playing in state of origin teams, in Queensland teams, under 18, under 19. So it's going to be a very interesting season. I think Nudgee College obviously will start favourites. They're a wonderful rugby nursery and well coached by Andrew Scottney. And we don't play them till later in the season, but we've got Churchy first, Anglican Church Grammar School, followed by Brisbane Boys College.
Sounds like an exciting competition. Michael, thanks again for your expertise. Really appreciate it. And like you, I'm really looking forward to the third test of the series between Ireland and the All Blacks, and Australia and England. Very hard to pick, but I think we're in for a couple of great test matches again.
Yeah, I think they will be. I really hope they're great games, John, because I think the interest in rugby union is starting to come back, and I love don't you love these tours that last for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. I think the more those tours can continue to happen, the more rugby will grow. The interest in rugby grows. I don't know whether we can ever get back to the stage where these teams play provinces in the country they're touring, because I think that's the grassroots that people love to see, and I can remember watching so many New Zealand provinces playing the touring Wallabies or the Irish or the British Lions, and they just generate so much interest and support, and rugby will benefit from that. And number of kids who want to play when they see those games, all of a sudden the numbers grow, and I think that's really important for World Rugby and national rugby boards to realise that those old tours, while they can be expensive, they have an enormous benefit to rugby union, both in the area and globally.
Oh, absolutely. I remember as a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s going and watching Lions matches and Springboks matches on major tours, and I used to keep a scrapbook as a kid of all the games and the match reports and the photos, and the interest was enormous. I had processions in every town the games were played in. It was you got to almost know the players without having met them.
Yes, exactly. And I think I watched the rugby league games that go out to the country, which I think is fabulous. And you see all the people who are there, and they do it really well because they go out early. They run clinics for the kids in the various schools and zones and regions, and that's the way rugby will grow. I think we've really got to, some people say, oh, that's backwards, that's many years ago. Well, maybe we learn from history and we realise that's a way in which we can continue to develop the numbers of kids who want to play rugby.
Which is exactly what you do. You and your coaches are doing, hands-on. So you're doing a great job.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Michael, and we'll look forward to catching up soon and reviewing the international season.
Yeah, lovely. Look forward to it, John.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.